Thank you, Louise. Hello, everyone, and welcome to OTF Connects, Math Inquiry using iPads and iDevices. I would like to thank each and every one of you for giving of your time to join us tonight. I'm Surya Skirhan, facilitator and coordinator of the OTF Professional Development Project. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Jacqueline Calden, who will be facilitating tonight's session. Jacqueline has facilitated numerous very, very effective webinars for OTF Connects over the last 2 years, and she always brings so much knowledge, skills to share with all of us. So welcome, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Surya. Okay, am I good to go now, Louise?
You are, Jacqueline, but I have to tell you, your voice is sounding very muffled. Are you able to adjust your microphone a little bit?
Oh, give me 2 seconds here. Is that sounding any better at all?
Yeah, that sounds a little better. How does everybody else find it? Can you hear Jacqueline okay? You can give us a green check mark if you can hear her all right.
I'll start talking useless stuff so that you guys can test my voice for a second. Okay,
that sounds a lot better. Okay, thanks, Jacqueline. Go ahead.
I think I know what it was. I had a hot wrap around my neck because I've done something really bad to my neck and shoulders. So I think that might have been interfering with my microphone. But okay, I'm going to go into a web tour here, which means I'm going to pull up a web screen on our page. And I'm going to clear the check marks off. Can I get a check mark, a green check mark from everyone if you're seeing a wiki page in the window that says Welcome to Math Inquiry using iPads and iDevices? Excellent. I'm going to put the link in the chat as well, and that way if you wanted to open this wiki in a different browser, you may. What you'll find as we work through the wiki tonight is that some of the functions will work right within the window that you see within Blackboard Collaborate. Some of the web tools that I have on here might not work very well in this window, and you might want to just open it up in a different browser in the background. So I'd like to start, and I'm glad that Louise asked about who was junior and intermediate. Please, I'm going to start suggesting some tools and some ideas for possible activities using iPads in math, and then I'm going to look to everyone in here to maybe brainstorm some ideas on how to use those tools in different junior and intermediate grades. My experience is, I'm a secondary school teacher, so mostly intermediate, but I spent a lot of time working with junior and intermediate elementary teachers when I was a technology consultant, and I've done a lot working on math cross-panel. So I do bring an understanding of elementary, but certainly not the experience that many of you will have from the elementary panel being immersed into it. That being said, the same tools work right across, and we just fine-tune them for our own needs, especially when we're focusing on the inquiry component using the iPads and iDevices. At the top of this wiki page is my contact information. Feel free to tweet me or email me later on. Chances are tonight will be a whole lot of stuff as we go through it. Because of the format of distance learning and iDevices, we can't necessarily work through every single one of the tools. We can talk about them and talk about potential uses, but you may come into questions after you leave here. By all means, give me a shout. The next thing I put on the wiki was the continuum, and it's from the tips material for the grade 6 to 10 math, just to have there if we feel the need to reflect and just to look into it. But the first thing I'd like to talk about is sometimes the struggle getting the files on and off of the iPad. So I'm going to click on a link, and hopefully everyone will follow me. Can I get a green check mark if everyone sees a wiki page now that says getting files on and off of iPads? Excellent. I'm going to put a direct link to that in the chat as well. There we go. So the next link I posted in the chat. I'm going to clear the check marks now that I can see that most people came with me for the trip there. Can I get a green check mark if you have one or more iPads that you're using in your classroom now, and a red check mark, or sorry, a red X if it's something that you're looking into, but don't have them there right now. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is maybe in the chat just ask you to make a quick comment on, okay, that was exactly what I was going to start asking for, Chris. Maybe just to further on that, if everyone could just throw a quick sentence up there, statement, just to let me know kind of what your situation is. Do you have multiple devices, access to multiple devices? Do you have your own iPad or iPhone or iPod Touch, and you're starting to think that this might be where you want to head with some of your classes? Just so I have a bit better of an understanding on where we all are before I start yammering on. Just a quick statement in the chat, if you don't mind, please, kind of on what your situation is right now. So Chris has an access to sign out. Thank you, Michael. Nice, Kathy. Oh, awesome, Ian. Wow. Marissa, that's great. Excellent. Ah, yes. Okay. Okay, so we have a lot of instructional coaches here. Interesting. That's new for running. When I'm running these sessions, I don't usually have that high of a percentage of folks in here working on as an instructional coach. Great. My current position is I work in an alternative program for half the day, and I work, which is connected to the secondary school that I teach at, and then, but it's off-site. So I work at a local friendship center to run that alternative program for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students. But then my other period of the day for this year is also an instructional coach period. Okay, so what I'm understanding, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong as we go, is that most people have had their hands on an iDevice, probably understand some of the basic functioning, but if I'm saying something that doesn't make sense to you, please, please, please question, throw your hand up, jump on the microphone, tell me to stop talking and backtrack a little bit. But I did want to talk about this getting files on and off of the iPads because it can be the biggest barrier at times to some educators. And there's a couple of different ways to do it, and what way you choose to use kind of depends on what your access to iPads is like. If you have a set in your classroom all the time, then you can hook up accounts like Dropbox, and I'll explain what that is in a second. It's an app, but it's also on a computer, and you can leave it hooked up all the time. And then you don't have to worry about it. You have a Dropbox folder there that if you put things into on your computer, you can always access them on the iPad. If you are signing iPads in and out on a period-by-period basis or a day-by-day basis, having accounts like Dropbox is still workable. It just means that you spend some time logging iPads into Dropbox and logging them out. And so some teachers choose to create a blog or a wiki or a website, or to use something like Edmodo where people just go to on the iPad and download the files from. And this is mostly important with math more than some other subject areas because we have files that we can use in math that work on our computer and our iPads, like Geometry Sketchpad files, Smart Notebook files, and things like Spreadsheets. And a lot of the time, those types of files really lend itself well to use in inquiry and investigating and trying things out to see how they work. So the first way I have up here, and I don't know, can you put a check mark if any of you have your iPad sitting beside you right now? Okay, so some people do. So what I might do is leave a couple minutes for people to try some things on their iPad, but also you can do the same things on the computer as well. So people who don't have them sitting beside them is absolutely fine. But you can see here that I've listed 2 different ways to get the files onto your iPad. One is creating a blog, a wiki, or a website, which is exactly what I've done for tonight, this wiki. And you can see that there's 3 files right there: the Uber Sketch Geometry Sketchpad file, the Algebra Tiles Smart Notebook file, and the Money Smart Notebook file. If you were on this wiki on your iPad, you could click on those files and open them in specific apps if you had those apps connected. Right now on your computer, you can click on them and download. The other way is listed below as Dropbox. If you go to Dropbox.com, and I'm going to put that link in the wiki. Actually, I'm going to clear the check marks and ask anyone to put a green check mark if they've used Dropbox before. Thanks, Louise. So if you've used Dropbox before, a check mark. Okay, so some people have seen it before. Dropbox.com is basically, excellent. Dropbox is one tool to share files to students no matter what device they're on. And you can do it a couple of different ways. You can create a class account and then just connect it to the iPad by downloading the free Dropbox app and signing in. And then anything that you upload into your Dropbox folder on the computer will show up in that Dropbox folder on the iPad. It just takes a few minutes to sync, and then once it has, those files will show up there. So you can see the picture I have on the iPad shows a picture of me clicking on a file called Uber Sketch. It's a Geometry Sketchpad file on my Dropbox, and then when I click on it, comes up and it says unable to view file. But the top right has that little bin with an arrow, that little box with an arrow, and if I tap on that, it says it offers me different apps to open it up in, and if I open it up in Geometry Sketchpad, it will let me open up that Geometry Sketchpad file. Does anyone have any questions or comments about getting files onto the iPad? So I don't know if anyone's tried this with Geometry Sketchpad files or Smart Notebook files or any other type of file. Has anyone tried any other methods of getting files onto the iPads? Any comments or? That depends on what you open the files in, Chris. So Chris has asked if the files that you use in Dropbox are saved to the iPad or if they just use temporarily. If I open a file in Geometry Sketchpad, it will download the file into Geometry Sketchpad. I can delete it, but it's downloaded into that. If I opened it in something like Edmodo and then logged out of Edmodo, it wouldn't save it. Did I answer that question? Okay. Anything else, or anyone else tried anything else for getting files onto an iPad or an iPhone or an iDevice? And how is that working with the Google Apps? Excellent. So you wouldn't have the need for Dropbox. You could use your Google Apps and open it up. You just might need to click the open in a separate app, like Geometry Sketchpad, if it doesn't open it up right in Google. And I didn't put Google up here only because school boards that have Google Apps have usually had some work around it. But if you don't have a school board that's using Google Apps, Google has an age limit of 13 to create an account. So I figured that those of you that had access to Google Apps probably knew how to use it, or at least had access or resources in your boards to use it, and those that didn't can't really use it very well anyways. So I didn't put it up here as an option, and I stuck to Dropbox as an example, and then creating a blog or a wiki or a website. Okay, so unless some other questions or comments there, then let's talk about getting files off of the iPad. So I've scrolled down a little bit, and there's a couple different examples of three different ways to get files off of an iPad. So if I've created something on my iPad, I can go to Dropbox and save the files into Dropbox, and then it will be accessible on another device. But this only works for images. So if I've created a graph, or if I've created some sort of geometry sketchpad, I might need to take a picture of it to upload it into Dropbox. Other types of files, so some other apps, an app called Explain Everything, which I'll show in a bit, it lets you save to Dropbox. It also lets you save to Evernote. So it really depends on what apps you're using, on what you're going to choose to use to get it off of there. But sometimes you'll see Dropbox, sometimes you'll see Evernote, save to Dropbox, save to Evernote, and those both have free accounts that you can use. One other option is to use something called Drop It to Me, and this works, and here's an example here, where if you go to Drop It to Me, you can create your own free account, and you have to have a Dropbox account, and it creates a link to a folder in Dropbox that students can submit things to with a password, but they never have to see what's in that folder. So I'm going to try and follow this link on the screen here to see how it goes with our web tour. Or not.
Have you already clicked
Can I
on
get a
it?
check mark if people see Drop It? I did. Are you seeing Drop It to Me right now?
It's on your login page for the password, yes.
Perfect, perfect. So I just wanted to show what this looks like. So when I create a Drop It to Me, I create my own username at the end, so it's Drop It to Me / Jack Calder. And students can go here, and I just make a class password. So mine is usually Calder Rocks, and they enter in Calder Rocks, and they can upload a file into that Dropbox. And then what happens is I see it in my Dropbox folder in a little while once it syncs. If you wanted to open up this page here, I'll put this in I'll send this to the chat. If you wanted to open that up in another browser, you're welcome to just click on that link and open it up in a browser. And yes, Marissa, it is. And you can upload a file in there if you want to test it. Just throw something non-sensitive into there. And you're welcome to play with it from the point of view of a student, or if you wanted to on that wiki. So I'm going to go back now to the wiki that you see on the screen. On the wiki is a link to, oh no, it's okay, Marissa. I wouldn't have answered if it was interrupting a train of thought. Please post your questions up anytime. There's a link there to Drop It to Me, and you can go and set up your own account there. But just so that you can see what it looks like from the point of view of a student, you can play with that. You can drop it to me, and I will give you my password here as a student to upload. You go into Calder Rocks. My password for my account is not Calder Rocks. That's the password I give to students to be able to upload a file into my folder. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have tested email functions on your iPad, because initially that was my great thought, was that I would just use email to email files to myself. But in our school board, the ports that allow the email app on the iPad to work are blocked for security reasons. I'm not sure, do any of you know what your situation is? Someone dropped an image into my Dropbox, I just got a notification. Have any of you tried to email from iPads or iDevices on school networks? And do you have success in your school board? Oh, lucky. Excellent, Michael. So for you getting files on and off, oh, you guys are good. You're a little bit luckier than the situation that I'm in, and so you can, perfect. You can email files on and off. So some of this isn't as much of a problem for you. In my school board, on the guest networks, we don't have filters. Well, I mean, we have like just filters for things like porn. But other than that, I mean, all of our social networks are open. There's no blocking. But the iPad, the app and email app, the ports that allow that to work are blocked for security reasons because it's an open network. Any student can bring their own devices on. So we have to do some troubleshooting to get files on and off. So at the very bottom, I've put three examples of different types of files that you may want to get on or off of iPads. The first are Geometry Sketchpad files, and those files would open up on an iPad in exactly what Marissa asked about. It's called Sketchpad Explorer, which is a free app. It doesn't let you create Geometry Sketchpad files, but it lets you open Geometry Sketchpad files and use them. Make sure you test the more complicated Geometry Sketchpad files on your iPad first, just to make sure that they don't act glitchy. But that app, and I'll show you where I've linked all the apps from tonight's session, so you can click on it to download after. But here are two samples of GSP files. The very first one opens up. I wonder if it would open up. No, it won't open up on my web tour. The first one is a whole series of virtual manipulatives or digital manipulatives within Geometry Sketchpad. And then the second one is a link to the Geometry Sketchpad within the Learning Math Success. The second type. Can you elaborate on that, Kathy? What it is you mean? Like, you can't really add new points. No, you're mostly manipulating the Sketchpad files that are there. So you really have to create them. Yes, if you've created a interactive aspect into it, you can. But like I said, test some of them. Some of them act a little glitchy sometimes. So I always test my Sketchpad files on the iPad before I decide to use them. But those can be great for inquiry activities. Yes, Geogebra is an amazing app. So another type of file you might want to open up on an iPad, like get onto an iPad and open up, is Smart Notebook. There's a Smart Notebook app. It's not free like the Sketchpad one is, but I think it's $4.99. You can check the wiki page. The home page has a link to all the apps with the prices. I think right now it's about $4.99. And if you could open up a Smart Notebook file in Smart Notebook, it's the same type of thing. You can manipulate all the components of it and use it. But I always create my Smart Notebook files on a computer and then put them in my Dropbox to be opened up. And students you can create Smart Notebook pages with apps on them. So Algebra Tiles, which is in the gallery in Smart Notebook, or integer tiles, or pieces of money. And then students could work away at their desks trying to solve a problem using those manipulatives and then using that Smart Notebook file. The other thing are spreadsheets. And there's a couple different apps for spreadsheets, and I highly doubt it matters which one you use unless someone here has some input. I just use numbers because it's what I had, which is the Apple one, but it's probably one of the more expensive ones, although all the new iPads that are coming out now have it for free. So you can access, so here's an example of a bit of a investigation for grade 9 at the bottom of this page, for grade 9s that use a spreadsheet. So students you could set up this spreadsheet ahead of time, the frame of it, and allow students to open it up on their iPad, or students could just go into a spreadsheet app and use that spreadsheet for their investigation. Does anyone have any questions about these three, kind of the idea of getting files on and off of your iPad or the Sketchpad notebook or spreadsheet? Has anyone used Sketchpad or Smart Notebook or spreadsheets on the iPad before in their classrooms? And what have you used them for? Any ideas? Oh, cool. Dave, did you use that as a station? then to gather the data from students? Like, did you pass an iPad around for them to gather, or were they all working on different investigations and collecting their own data? Oh, neat. That's great. Oh, that's cool, Marissa. So you made a smart notebook file, and then they could work through it together at their own table and their own groups. Nice. Can anyone see a way for whatever it is that they're teaching now, or for all of our instructional coaches, maybe a teacher that they work with, that a way that they could use a Geometry Sketchpad file or a notebook file? I mean, that takes it might take some processing and looking through the different activities that are out there and the examples that I've put links to on the wiki. But can any of you think of, maybe you've already used a Geometry Sketchpad file that you could use on iPads, or something that the iPads would help with? Does anyone have any ideas on something? I use it for Algebra Tiles all the time. I like it because it lets me, when a student that I'm working with is struggling to grasp the concept, like collecting like terms in algebra, and then we can just pull out one of the iPads and throw up the algebra tiles, and they can do the questions on that. I agree, Chris. I absolutely love Desmos. I like Desmos and Geogebra for some different things. Yes, Marissa, you're right. So you can't create a brand new file on the Geometry Sketchpad free app. You can just import them in, which is why I spent some time there focusing on how to get the files in. You do have to create them on your computer, or find them on your computer, because there's lots of shared Geometry Sketchpad files out there. Yep. Excellent. Okay. The next thing I want to look at here is actually on this very front page that I've got you on right now. If I clear the check marks, is everybody on the home page to the wiki, the Welcome to Math Inquiry? Could you throw up a green check mark if you are? Good. Okay. So if I scroll down, and maybe you want to do the same thing, to the section called Apps, I've listed all the apps that I'm hoping that we touch upon tonight, and then any others that people suggest, I'll add to this at the end of the night. But so this wiki will be available for you indefinitely. And I've listed the apps. I've explained just briefly what it is, linked to any tutorials if there are some, the price, and if it works on iPads, iPods, or iPhones, or other devices. So that big long table is in here. And then at the very bottom of the page are some general math resources, some links to different sites with just some resources that are out there. So that will be there any of the time. So when I was talking earlier about the Geometry Sketchpad or Sketchpad Explorer, the link to it is on that table. And the same with the Smart Notebook app. So you can go to those links to access those apps and numbers, the spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to talk quickly about digital manipulatives. I think we've kind of talked about this already. With digital manipulatives, I see it as two different ways. I see, first of all, I'm not 100% sure we always need the iPad versus a computer or a laptop for them. And I'm not always convinced that necessarily there's a benefit to them over a physical manipulative. But if iPads are the tools I have in my classroom, iPhones, iPods, then it's certainly what I'm going to use. And I also find that when it comes to differentiation, that if certain groups are working on different problems and they need different manipulatives, it's much easier to access the digital. It also allows them to access them from home. So I do use them quite often when I am in a math classroom. And I see it as two different ways. One is that there are apps that are made out there specifically for digital manipulatives. So there's a GeoBoard app, there's an Algebra Tile app, there's a Color Tiles app that I can download and install and they're one-purpose apps and they're there whenever I need them. But I can also make my own manipulatives using Smart Notebook anytime that I want if I'm lucky enough to have the $4.99 Smart Notebook app on my iPad. And can I get a check mark or a comment in the chat, people that have used Smart Notebook software on a computer before? Just a green check mark if you have, or if you have something to add to that in the chat. Okay, so most people have used Smart Notebook. If you haven't, then there is a Smart Exchange, a link to a Smart Exchange on that front page of that wiki that will take you to some pre-made Smart Notebook files. But you can always email me if you have questions or more information about Smart Notebook. But for those of you that have used Smart Notebook before, you're probably comfortable with the idea of making manipulative type pages, and then you could share those to your students. So it doesn't matter what you're working on. You could use a manipulative Smart Notebook page for the students to work out their problems and investigations on. Any thoughts or experiences using digital manipulatives in the past, whether it be on a computer or an iPad? Any ideas or things that have worked well that you've had, that you've done in the past? Does anyone have anything they'd like to share in the chat or the microphone? Yes, the National Library of Virtual Manipulatives. I quite like that. Yeah, it does work fairly well. When they very first came out, we struggled with bandwidth, believe it or not, internet access, at least where I was teaching up in northern Ontario, like Moosonee, like James Bay, and we really struggled. We couldn't really access it very well, so we actually we had the CDs, and we used them in schools. But I think now that our internet is much more a higher bandwidth, it works pretty well. I find that the Smart Notebook digital manipulatives, I'm usually looking to the digital ones that they've had to see how to model them after. Okay, and I mean, I've spoken to some teachers who prefer digital manipulatives over physical ones, just because they can send them home, or if they have some problems with management of materials in their classrooms. I'm going to head back to the home page for this wiki. And I'm going to ask everyone to throw up a check mark if they see a graphing page on their screen. Yay. I'm sorry to be a pain and keep asking you that you see it. It's just that we've had problems with the web tour sometimes in the past where it stops working and I didn't realize it and everyone was wondering what on earth I was talking about. So a couple different apps I've thrown up here for graphing. One is Geogebra, and the second one is Desmos. The really nice thing about both of these apps is that they work on any computer web browser, and they're a free app to download onto iPod, iPhone, iPad, and you can download them and use them on your own devices as well. So they play really well in a bring your own type of device or a multi-device environment. If you have Chromebooks, laptops, and iPads all in one classroom, this works on all of them. So I've put up some resources and some examples. For Geogebra, I have the manual and some tutorials. I find Geogebra takes a little while to get used to. I struggled the other day just trying to function with a spreadsheet, but once I get the hang of it, it works quite well. Geogebra can also has software that can be downloaded onto any computer that makes it not dependent on the web. If you need, if you have a high-risk situation where you can't be dependent on the internet crashing on you or something, then you can download Geogebra. It also works a bit more fluidly and quickly than the web version, but there is all three: mobile app, web version, and you can download it and install it on a computer. So here's a possible activity, and then I've made a video that you can look at to see how it's done. if you opened up a blank GeoGebra file and enter the following equations, y equals 1x plus 3, y equals 2x plus 3, y equals 3x plus 3, y equals 4x plus 3, students can investigate using different equations what the different numbers in an equation does to the equation of a line or to any function, the graph of any function. So if anyone actually wants to try this, what I am going to do is give us, let me just grab a link here to throw up. Janet, can these apps be used for elementary? Do you do any graphing in elementary? In your grade, depending on what grade you use? What types of things do you graph in your grade? Surveying, bar graphs, okay. Yeah, you'd probably stick to a spreadsheet for a lot of the bar graphs. If you're doing line graphs, then this works out very well. You can enter in points, and there's a spreadsheet function that you go in and you enter in the information, and they work that way. So for the graphing, depending on what it is that you're graphing, you may choose to stick to something like a spreadsheet that shows the graph after, or you might use one of these online tools if you're pushing it a bit further. These ones might be a little bit more secondary focused. If you want to try it, then you can go to that web address in a different browser, and you could watch the 1-minute video up here and try it. Or if you want to just watch these little videos, I'm going to be quiet for about 4 minutes so that you can watch these videos without me talking in the background, and then maybe we'll brainstorm some ideas. So I'm going to be quiet, and you can watch these videos on this page for a few minutes, and then we'll come back. Okay, if you've checked out Geogebra and maybe haven't found it useful, or maybe have found it useful, and now that you know that these tools are here, can I just get a green check mark if you're back? Okay, so it looks like most of us are back. So the other tool I have here for graphing is the Desmos, and it's very similar. For some things, it's a bit more simplistic, and for other things, it doesn't do quite as well. It doesn't do, for those of you in secondary, intermediate, linear regression very well. It doesn't do a lot of best fit, whereas GeoGebra will. So basically, I've done the exact same graphing activity on a 50-second video up here in Desmos to see how that one works. And then the other Desmos activity I've done, because it works very well in Desmos, is a table of values. So a lot of the time we talk about position number in a pattern, especially if we're using tiles and patterns, and then we talk about position number and number of tiles. You could use that. So the second video under Desmos on this page on the screen right now shows you how to use Desmos for that. So I'm going, and I don't think there's sound on this video either, but these ones are just quick, just showing you how to do something. Yeah, no, there's no sound on these videos either, but I will quiet down for maybe 3 minutes this time and just let you take a look at one of the two Desmos videos if you just want to see the difference and how that graphing app works. Very similar to GeoGebra with some differences depending on what your needs are. So I'll be quiet for a couple of seconds and let you just take a look at those videos, and then we'll come back. Okay, if I could just get a green check mark once you've checked out what you'd like to check out for Desmos. Okay, great. Okay, so these are some graphing options, and there's also spreadsheet graphing available on the iPad. What I'd like to talk about next is kind of in my mind, what really makes the iPad stand out and what makes it so useful as a tool. I mean, those graphing apps, I love them. And in a secondary classroom, we use those all the time for looking at functions. And it allows a student to graph 10 different functions. I don't have to tell them which parts of a function change the visual representation. They can test 10 different apps in 2 minutes and figure that out for themselves. So those graphing apps really do lend to an inquiry lens and letting students try things out themselves, and all without a $200 graphing calculator. It's a free app, but all of those can also be done on a computer. So it hasn't set the iPad, hasn't set it apart from a computer yet, in my mind, what we've looked at so far. But when I start looking at what we're going to look at next, so on this home page here, I'm going to go to number 4, and I'm going to go to making tutorials and showing thinking. This is, in my mind, when the iPads really start to shine. And basically, students can be making their own tutorials or can be explaining their thinking and archiving it and documenting it. I might not get around to 30 students in a class to show me, to have them walk me through a problem every day. But if they can, in groups or individually, explain their thinking and record it somewhere for me to look at later, or just to look at select students, then, or to look at each other's and to hear each other's thinking, this is what the iPad does really, really well. In a grade 10 math class today in our school, we use the iPads, and we use an app called Explain Everything, which is on it's the 3rd app listed on this page. And the Explain Everything app today, students went through around the school and they found pictures of things that were on an angle, straight lines that were on an angle. And then they used Explain Everything to record their voice and drawing on the screen to show us how they calculated slope. The Explain Everything app is one of my favorite apps. I'm going to clear the check marks. Either a check mark or a comment in the chat on anyone that's used Explain Everything before. Thank you, Elise. Yes, all these links are posted in the wiki, so you'll have access to any of these links at any time. So the Explain Everything app, what it lets you do is it lets you take either a picture of something, or it lets you just draw on the screen. It lets you, I like Jing. It lets you bring in images. It lets you bring in whatever it is you need to do. And then you can record your voice and write on the screen and then export it as a video. Oh, that's neat, Leanne. That's great. And Louise, yes, Jing. So just for those of you, there's been a quick conversation here about Jing. And Jing can be found, it's for a computer, not for an iPad, but it can be, oh, I forgot the www. It can be found through TechSmith, and it's a free download for any computer. And you install the software, and it lets you record your computer screen for 5 minutes. And you can do it multiple times, yeah, like Louise says there, per video. So you can use your screen. So it makes you make your video under 5 minutes. And actually, I've seen some research. I don't have the link here. But there's research that says the perfect length for content or an informational video is 4 minutes. So it's actually perfect for making quick instructional videos. So you could use Jing to record your smart notebook screen while you're working and writing on it and talking with your voice to make little instructional videos. Explain Everything does this really well, except that you're writing on the screen of the iPad and recording your voice and manipulating things and moving them around. Explain Everything is great. I'm going to explain the other couple of apps here, and then I'm going to let you check out all the examples. So the very first one at the top, called Telegami. So Telegami lets you create a character, and you can put it in front of a photo. In this case, this has nothing to do with math. It's just a photo of my niece climbing on a screen, on a climber. But you could use Telegami with a photo of their math work. So if they did a graph, a bar graph, they've done something by hand, and they could do it commenting or explaining how they've done something. They could use it to provide feedback to another group, but they could put that picture of something either mathematical in the background or of their actual handwritten math work, and then create this telegami person explaining what they've done. So it lets them use their voice to record it in a kind of interesting way, and then they could share those with other students so that they're hearing each other's thinking. Another great function of the iPads is simply the camera function. So this student here, the example that I'll give you some time after to take a look at, this is actually a science class, not a math class, but she used it to show ionic compounds, and she just used a camera and a whiteboard and just wrote and talked about it. And I really, really got a chance to understand what she knew. I always knew that she was understanding, but I couldn't tell if she was just regurgitating steps and telling me what things were. This video really showed me exactly what she understood. And then at the very bottom is a voice thread. And a voice thread is something that you can create on a computer or on an iPad. And again, it lets you write on the screen and record your voice. So I'm going to send you the link to this page of the wiki specifically into the chat. I am going to be quiet for a few minutes, let you check out these different ways of students explaining their understanding using the iPad. And then when you're back, if you could throw up an idea or a brainstorm or a question in the chat. So maybe an idea on how a math topic that you could get students to create or share their thinking about. I'll post one up to get us started, but if after you've had a chance to look at these videos on this wiki page that are created with different apps, if you could come back and just give some ideas or share some thoughts or questions, that would be great. So I'll be quiet for a few minutes. These videos do have sound, and let you take a look at them, and then we'll have some sharing. Thanks. Okay, once you've had a chance to look at some of the examples, come on back into the chat and let me know if you can think of something that your students or students that you work with could that they could make tutorials about or explain their thinking using. And maybe which app that you think you would use. There are a couple of other apps other than Explain Everything. There's one called Show Me, that's free. There's one called Edu Creations, that's free. And they're all very much like Explain Everything. Explain Everything is $2.99. The other two are free. The reason I use Explain Everything is because it lets you export and import from and to everything. I can dump it in Dropbox, dump it in to YouTube, to Vimeo, to Evernote, and I can import from all those places as well. I can import PowerPoint, I can import anything. But Edu Creations is great, absolutely great, and it's free if you don't need quite all those sharing options. Thank you. So does anyone have any ideas on how they could use something like sharing your thinking or student making tutorials in a class, in a junior and intermediate class? One example or one activity I've done, and it was with a grade 4-5 class from one side of the county and a grade 6 class, was it grade 3 class, a grade 4-5 class, and then at another time with a grade 6 class. But we used we had the students poll each other in an online discussion forum. So they got into groups of 4, 2 kids from each class, created a poll, sent it out to the class, got the input, and then they graphed it in their own classrooms in the groups of 2, and then they posted it up into their small groups of 4, and they shared the pictures of their graphing, and then as a feedback for each other. using one of these tools. So they brought in the graph that their other group made, and they said, you know, I really like how you've done this. This is where you could shift to in your graphing. Yes, absolutely, Chris. Oh, that's neat. The rubber band loom tutorials. Neat. And I think that this type of explaining your thinking using the iPads really can go a long way with math, and adds a little bit of excitement over a pen and paper task. Okay, so using and creating video. So what I mean by this part is using video to set up the inquiry piece. So Dan Meyer's link up here is definitely secondary for those of you, but the idea does not have to be secondary, and you don't need to use video like highly edited video. You could use very raw video. I've watched him and I've listened to another math person speak one time, and they said, you know, the smartphone was the best thing that ever happened to his classroom. He'd be out, March break, wandering on some vacation, wandering the beach, and would see something that connected to his math lesson he would be doing in April. And he would take pictures and video of it. And bringing that into the classroom, he said, it really expanded that, really expanded his math classroom. So Dan Myers talks about this 3-act math, where he introduces the conflict or the story using a video. So what is the inquiry? What is the situation? In this Act 2, there's an obstacle, or they have to figure out a problem. And then Act 3 is when they see the end of it. So one example they have here is, will it go in the hoop? And what he does is he has a video of a basketball about, you know, 2/3 of the shot of a basketball shot aimed towards the hoop. And he shows that. And then he takes the picture of that basketball shot and puts it into Geogebra and tells the students to use the tools in Geogebra for graphing to figure out if they think it will go into the hoop or not. And then they watch the end of the video after to see if they were right, if it did go in or not. And there are lots of different apps that you could use for coming up with video. And you can use just the camera app on any smartphone, on any iPad. You could edit that video using things like iMovie if you really wanted to. But most of the time, you don't need high-end video. You just need rough little clips of video. And then there's another app here that is $4.99, but has been amazing in a secondary class. And it's the Vernier Video Physics app. So what it does is it lets you take video clips and track objects. So you could take the basketball and track it in there, and it will graph the motion of the basketball. So there's just some ideas and some examples in here. But have any of you ever used video in math to set up a problem for students to solve? Or images. It doesn't have to be video. Video or images to set up a problem. Can anyone think of some topics that you study in math, like the patterning and the video looming? That's a great way to do it. Any ideas or any suggestions or topics, Dave, that worked well? Yes, distance times graphs. Absolutely. That's great. Can anyone think of any real-life situations that they could get a picture of or a video of that they might be able to bring into a math classroom? Or some topics that they might be interested in trying to find video for or images for? Oh, that's neat. Grocery store special. So when you're in the grocery store, taking pictures of different products and sales, and then having them work on that. Yes, Louise. Absolutely. Chris, what was your media clips assignment?
It might be easier if I explain it.
Excellent.
In one of, I guess, back in Teachers College, we actually had to create one of these media clips assignments where you have to find a picture. Either you take it yourself or you discover something in real life, and it inspires you to write a bunch of math questions related to it. So, for instance, maybe perhaps I remember traveling in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. There's the big fiddle. It's this giant-sized two-story fiddle that's there, and you take a picture of that, and you kind of start wondering, well, how big would the person's arm need to be in order to hold this fiddle? And you start making proportion calculations, so you can create the questions, and then you create the solutions and explain.
That's great.
So I have a gifted grade 9 class, so I give them that as a project to do. So they have to find a picture or create a picture, and then I left it open in terms of the math area that they can create the questions from, whether it's from relations or geometry or probability or anything, but you have to come for enrichment.
That's great. Now, will they actually work through each other's problems after they submit the kind of assignment? That's awesome.
Yes, they'll have to create the questions, provide the context of the picture, and create the solutions, and then eventually present one of the questions to the class, and I guess work through one of the questions.
Cool. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem.
Does anyone else have any other ideas what they could do or have done using the video or image to set up the problem? Okay. I love that idea of the fiddle and using that, and I love the idea of the grocery store with the ratios, and so they're looking at unit price for their different sales. It really does allow you to set up a much more a very open-ended question for students to focus on when there's a picture there that's not as intimidating as a question with all the details and the words and the language. Sometimes a simple image, and I'm letting the students go and create the questions and trying to solve a question, can be so powerful. My students were grade 10 students, and they did that with two people running across the screen. And we just showed the first clips of the two runners, and they had to figure out who would win if the race was this long, and whatnot. Okay, so going on to creating audio. This is another thing that the iPads do really well. They really let you record audio, but the other thing they do is they let you add some music and some creativity to the background of it. The Garageband tool and the Garageband app for the last week, I haven't checked it today. I'll check that in a couple of seconds. It has been free. So if I can suggest to anyone who doesn't already have the Garageband app is to download it. It might be free permanently now. Apple has said that all their new iDevices will have iMovie and GarageBand and the iWork apps on it, which is about, in total, about $40 worth of apps, and they're going to put them for free now. But GarageBand has been free even for people who already have devices for the last week. I'm not sure if it is today, but it's a save of $10. Yes, it is. There we go. Excellent. So it's still free. So if you have the chance, then if you don't already have it on your iPhone, iPod, iPad, download it. It lets you use different instruments to record audio. Could be used for patterning, even the creating audio portion. But in combination with something like SoundCloud or Audio Boost, students could be making newscasts or, thank you, Louise, podcasts, documenting classroom lessons, activities using audio. We always think of math as very written, but they could be explaining real-world connections to math. There, on this page, there's an example that I'll shut up for a second and let you take a listen to. It's Mally Bickley is a teacher in Bradford, and she had her class record some work about fractions. And so they each did some little recordings, and here's one student's piece of work here. It's only 18 seconds long. It doesn't have to be a long process, which is really nice about audio, is literally you could pass it around one device around the classroom through a 100-minute numeracy block. They could each do it as part of as an activity, even with one device, and you could probably hit most people, most students, if they were just recording something, how they did a question or did something like that. Yes, Lysol wipes for all those germs they hand around with the iPads. The other video I've put on this wiki page, and let me just send you this wiki page to the chat, there we go, is how to use GarageBand. I don't know if it's just me and my lack of musical prowess, if you will, but I struggled to figure out how to use the GarageBand on the iPad a little bit. So this video, I don't suggest you watch it now, but if you ever decide to use GarageBand, watch this video, and it's a great 5-minute tutorial on how to use it. But I will be quiet for maybe for a minute or two. Let you check out the links to either GarageBand, AudioBoo, and SoundCloud. And just to be clear, GarageBand is what I use personally to record audio when I want music added to it. I use AudioBoo when I'm doing it quickly and I want it posted online, because AudioBoo is a free app you can download. You record your voice and it posts it online, and then I can put it, just like the example here from Mally Bickley, right onto a web page. Yesterday, or a couple days ago, I was working with a French class who was recording audio messages in French and leaving them around the schools connected to QR codes, so that other students would come up with their phones, scan the QR code, and listen to the AudioBoo. It would take them to this AudioBoo, and they would listen to the student's message in French. And those were placed all over the school. And can't remember what the purpose of their messages or what they were doing with, but mostly so I didn't understand what they were saying. But so AudioBoo makes it really easy to post things. And SoundCloud I often use in combination with GarageBand. So if I do an audio recording on GarageBand, I can upload it to SoundCloud, and that creates a way to share it on a class website or something. Absolutely, Louise. Yeah, I think that the QR codes with sound and even video or visual could be a scavenger hunt throughout your school, could be used in math. We did that with a grade 10 math class because it came down to the fact that they had to factor quadratics. And we were struggling to make enough real-world connections to make it entertaining, and it came to a point where we had to practice, and the class was struggling to be engaged in just practicing factoring quadratics. So we turned it into a scavenger hunt. They had clues that took them to the next place, and when they got to a place, they had a QR code, they scanned it, they had a math question, they had to solve it before it, and they come and trade it in before they got their next clue. So the actual QR codes and the recordings really had nothing to do with the math or helping the math in that situation at all. It was purely an engagement factor and to get them up and moving around. But I'm convinced that could be built into actual real math much better than we did in that example. But like I promised, I'll shut up for a couple of seconds and let you check out the check out this example, and then maybe make some suggestions in the chat on how you could use audio recording in the math class. Any other ideas on using audio recording in math? Mally commented when she did this activity with her class and the fractions that she could really understand some misconceptions in her students after. And what it did is it set up one station. So she had her classroom set up in stations. It was a grade 4 class. And she had her classroom set up in stations. And one station had, I think it was her iPhone and her iPad, to be honest with you. Just 2 devices sitting there for personal devices. And then she worked with another group. And then one group had some independent practice to work on. And when she was working with the group, she did some, I don't know what she was working on, some remedial, just catching up on some skills or something. But then the group over at the table could do independently recording their voice and their description for the fractions and the independent practice group. But it let her almost be in 2 places at one time. She could eventually get into the minds of those kids that weren't working with her during that day. So I think the audio recording piece can help with stations as well. Any other ideas? Okay. Curation. Does everybody see something called Padlet on the front on the screen? If you do, could I ask you to tap it twice and type in your favorite math app, if you can, or app that you can use for math?
I don't see Padlet, Jacqueline. It might not have switched over to that screen.
Oh, okay. What, are you on the home page?
Creating audio. Nope, still on the audio page.
Okay. Let me do my little trick. 1 second, okay? Uh-oh. I may have lost my whiteboard or my web tour.
It flashed up there for a second for us. Yep. Okay, we're back on it. At least I am.
Oh, are you? Okay, I don't have
You're
it,
on
but
the
that's
curation.
fine.
Yep.
Okay, can I get a
we're on the
check mark from
curation
people?
page.
Sorry, can I get a check mark from people that say curation on their screen? Great. I am going to send that link to the chat just in case you need to look at it in a different window if it's not working well for you. Just open up that link I just sent into another page. So someone just created a Padlet this week for a global read. Ooh. Cool. So if you see a Padlet on your screen, if you don't, you can click on the link and open it up in your web browser and look at it in a different screen. But if the Padlet, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's like a digital corkboard. You can post ideas, post links, post images onto this wall. So students could consider graphing the same thing, and you could post images up here of your graph. You could post a brainstorm for something. You could post links to different images or videos on here, and students can all access this from the same page. So I don't know if anyone has any math apps that they like to use, that they'd like to share on this Padlet, but if you double click on it, you can type in something. Educreations, awesome. Desmos, IXL. What's IXL? Can someone explain that to me? Yeah, if the Padlet's not working for you, if we're overloading it, then people can come back to this and add things later. It's not a big deal. Ah, thank you, Leanne. So that's the IXL.com, Wolfram Alpha. Oh, great. Thank you, Leanne. I've never even heard of that before. Oh, I love learning new things. Thank you. So I use Padlet a lot of the time in a math class to brainstorm, to get students kind of a diagnostic. What do you know about this topic? What do you think about this topic? And that type of thing. Has anyone ever used this kind of brainstorming activity, or can you think of a time or a way that you could use this brainstorming activity in a class? Oh, neat, for rocks and minerals. Ah, share multiplication strategies. That's great. Oh, word wall with definition links. These are some excellent ideas. I am going to try and document these ideas on the wiki page. Maybe on this page right here underneath Padlet. I'm going to try and come back into this chat. Louise, I can email the chat to myself at the end, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do that at the end, and then I'll add these ideas that people have shared on this wiki right here by the Padlet, because those are some excellent, excellent ideas. Great. Okay, I just want to show you one other thing on this page. I'm going to skip over Evernote for now. By all means, check it out if you want to on your own. But if you scroll down to the very bottom to Live Binders, Live Binders is like a digital binder that you can create tabs. And basically what it does is it just links to web pages, but it shows the web pages there. So if you had 10 different web resources on the same topic or within a unit, you could link them all here. I think it's even more powerful to have students creating those about different topics. And Live Binders lets you just kind of create this collection of resources. So they could find a collection of resources about certain topics. And there's a Live Binders app for the iPad as well, a free one. So that's just something else I wanted to point out here. I am going to go to the home page, and hopefully I won't lose everybody again. I'm going to talk about two more things quickly, hopefully before 9 here. This one's, do you see, it doesn't really matter if you see this page or not, because it's not all that well designed, but do you see the document camera page on the screen right now? So, okay. 1 second, please.
Do you want me to just try clicking on it, Jacqueline?
I would love that.
Okay. Okay, give us a green check mark if you're getting the document camera sharing page.
Oh, somebody is. Good. Oh, good. Okay. You have the magic touch.
Okay.
Here I officially Vanna White. So I don't see it, but I'll just work off another page for now. So basically there's a document camera app. I mean, you could use the camera app and take pictures of anything underneath the iPad. You could, and then annotate it or write on it in an app like As You Creations or Explain Everything. So you could use just the regular camera as a document camera, but this Belkin company has made this free Belkin Stage App, and it lets you, it's just a higher functioning. It really does turn that iPad into a functioning document camera. I'm lucky that I'm used to teaching in a science classroom, so I have retort stands, and I can make my own iPad stands. They have crazy expensive ones out there if you're lucky enough to have access to funds. I've also seen students create their own iPad stands with the top of the laptops or the top of books just standing upwards. I don't know if anyone has any suggestions for how to hold an iPad up without a $200 or $300 iPad stand, but when you can figure out how to do it with a plug into the projector, it makes a great document camera and saves you some money that way. I can see a few people chatting, so I'm just typing in the chat, so I'm just going to hold off for a second. Okay, thanks. Oh, so a small glass table, that's a good idea. Okay, I've got 2 more pages left that I was hoping to get through, but it doesn't look like I will. Just to, Louise, could you, I'm not sure if you guys see the home page or not now. You do? Awesome.
Heading back to that page now.
Thanks. So there was the collaboration and the polling and quizzing that I had on here. The collaboration, what I was thinking of was online discussions. So if you're watching a video or discussing strategies, so there's a couple links to different resources in there for online discussions that can be used easily on the iPad. The other page I had, sorry, I just put up a different window, was the polling and quizzing. I know a lot of teachers that use apps like Socrative or Google Forms as diagnostics. So you can post a couple multiple choice questions up or short answer, and you can either choose to project them on the screen and so that everyone sees every other student thinking as well, which can be very helpful to see how another student thinks about a question, or to get a quick diagnostic. If you do some multiple choice questions, say 4 or 5 as an exit ticket or at the beginning of a unit, you very quickly can see where your misconceptions are if you set up your questions right and what it is that you might need to focus on more. Any suggestions or ideas or thoughts about the collaboration or polling or quizzing ideas? Has anyone used any of these in their classroom? The nice thing is that it often works with, yes, that's right, with Google Forms, because a Google form, and there is a video, a link to a video on how to use Google Forms on that page. It exports all the answers into a spreadsheet, so it lets you set it up so that it can be marked for you as well. Yes, Poll Everywhere is great. The only reason I chose to put up Socrative is because it's completely free. Whereas with the Poll Everywhere, there's a charge if you go over a certain number of students. Most teachers don't. Most teachers can do just fine within the free version of Poll Everywhere. And to be honest with you, it's a little prettier. Socrative just has some quick access. Like, you don't have to log in for it to track you. It's pretty easy. But Poll Everywhere I quite like. I actually choose to use it quite often. Any other thoughts? Oh, what's Flubaroo? I just saw that now, sorry. Maybe we can convince Chris to grab the mic after. Oh, there we go. Oh, so it's another app you use to mark the Google Forms. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Does anybody have any questions or comments? That wiki, let me just grab the link again for you for the homepage of that. That wiki isn't going anywhere. If you want something or if you would like to contribute to that wiki, by all means, give me a shout. I will add you as a user to the wiki, or if you have content or ideas you want to send to me. And yep, the Padlet will stick around so people can add their ideas for favorite math apps to it. And I will take some of the ideas that were shared in the chat and add to that wiki. But if anyone has any ideas, that would be great to add to it. Thank you, Marissa. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Meenakshi. Thanks, Dave.
before everybody flies off, I'm just going to flip over to our feedback page, and I know Siria's going to just jump on and say goodnight as well. But that big orange link that's right in the center of the whiteboard space, you could actually click on that. I'm also going to post it in the chat here. That is our quick little Google form feedback that we would love to have you spend a minute or two filling out. That lets us know what works for you and what other ideas you might like to see in OTF Connects in the future. And then the lower link further down is, of course, our OTF Connects web page, where it's got the calendar and everything else. So please do check out our other sessions. We've got Book Reports No More with Danuta tomorrow night, and that looks like fun, alternatives to book reports. And then the next night we've got elementary financial literacy. And I know Siria wants to jump on and say goodnight as well, but her microphone does not appear to be working. Let me just check something here, Siria. Okay, try again. Okay, if not, then I know what Syria is saying is thank you so much, Jacqueline, for another extremely thorough session. Lots of really new and different ideas looking at inquiry and iDevices and math together, different ways of using some of those applications that we're maybe more accustomed to using for literacy-based activities. So that was really cool to see that. And thank you all for your time tonight. We know it's your own time, and we're very grateful that you want to extend your learning. And we do hope to see you again sometime soon. And yes, Syria has just let me know that her stuff is frozen. Oh, she was able to give us a smiley face. So anyway, we do hope to see you back again tomorrow. You will get an email that's got the link, of course, to Jacqueline's wiki. It's so great she puts it all in one spot for us. But the recording of tonight's session as well will be posted, and you'll be notified of that. So do follow us on Twitter and catch up with all their other archive sessions that are also on our resources page. There's tons of stuff there. Other sessions that Jacqueline has done with iPads and other types of technology. And anyway, thank you all so much tonight, and we hope to see you again soon.